What's up, everybody? We are live. Welcome in. This is FSM Football Sunday. He's Justin Fensterman from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio and Fantasy Alarm, the host of Wake Up Fantasy Sports each and every Saturday morning. You get your information, you get your knowledge. It just goes through your veins and into your brain, and then you'll become a smarter fantasy player. So we are here for the next hour taking your lineup questions here on Periscope. We're going to try and get things going on Facebook Live and YouTube Live as well. But Fensty, good morning, buddy. Good to have you back in our regular time slot. How you doing?
Good, Benny. Hi is good. Crucial Week 10. We're in the double digits now for those that are playing in seasonal leagues. Now at the time as any, you're 4-5, you're 5-4. Hey, if you're 2-7 right now, that's why you have us. Because whether it's salaried sites like Fantasy Sports Markets or the other sites, whether it's salaried or not, doesn't matter to us. We're still going to help you win.
Absolutely. We need to. We got plenty of stuff to dive into. We will take your lineup questions coming up very soon. But Fancy, there's a couple key issues that I think we need to dive into, as well as a couple latest injury reports before we get started.
That's right. Let's start with Rob Gronkowski here. As we're talking about every week, it seems this guy is dealing with multiple injuries and has throughout the season. There are some conflicting reports out there. He wasn't expected to play yesterday, but now he's still with the team, and he's now still questionable. So that's something you're going to have to watch out for going into the 1 o'clock game. So unfortunately, Ben, it's an early situation here. So you're going to have to keep track because this is going to be right up to the final minute, it looks like.
Do you trust somebody like Gronk, assuming he is given the green light to play? Do you trust him enough to play him this week?
In seasonal, yes. In daily, I'm probably going other options.
Okay. Meanwhile, you have a situation in Jacksonville where Leonard Fournette is going to get the start. He's finally back, ready to represent for fantasy owners that took a chance on him probably in the late first round. The problem is that there's going to be a lot of other options in the backfield for Jacksonville in a road game against Indianapolis. You have Carlos Hyde, who they just traded for. You have TJ Yeldon, who's been a back-end running back one this year in PPR leagues. How does this situation unfold for Jacksonville?
Well, if you've had Leonard Fournette, and a lot of people are wondering whether or not to start the guy, and Ian Rappaport came out and said, and according to reports, that he's expected to get a full workload. What that means, unsure, but I'm guessing that is somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 touches. And could you really rely on the Jaguars' passing game? I'm thinking today, especially until we figure everything out, you have to start Fournette. You have to. I mean, you picked him in the first round for a reason. He's been sitting there literally the entire season. You've been waiting for this moment. So you got to give him a go. If he gets 15 touches, which I'm comfortable saying that I think he's going to get, then he should be fine. No limitations was removed from the injury report. So all systems a go for him, Ben, because you can't rely on that passing game as much.
Sammy Watkins likely going to be out for the Kansas City Chiefs today for Week 10. It's already a fantastic matchup for Kansas City. You have an opportunity for perhaps Tyreek Hill to get himself going. Kareem Hunt is in a smash spot. But as far as replacing Sammy Watkins, I think somebody like Chris Conley can absolutely step up, get maybe 3 to 5 targets, and be sort of a last-minute fill-in guy, and maybe even a dart throw in GPPs as well when you're playing DFS.
With it being such a heavy bye week, Ben, are you comfortable saying that you think he would be a good flex option, especially in those leagues, let's say, that start 3 wide receivers?
I think a lot of it is dependent. I think in this matchup, you can certainly make that argument, right? Because of how bad Arizona's defense has been, because there's so many situations that you're trying to figure out where to go. Like, I think at that point, if you're in a league with 3 wide receivers, is Maurice Harris sitting on their waiver wire? I don't think so. I think he's probably gone. Is Martez Valdez-Scantling there? I doubt he's
probably
there as
not.
well. So
I got someone who might be there.
Okay.
And I was going to ask you this. Would you say Josh Doxson or Chris Conley today?
I would probably go, because both of them have really good matchups.
That's right.
I still think, you know what, I'd probably go Doxson just by the thinnest of hairs left on our faces and on the top of our head.
Don't make fun of me now.
But just because I think the touchdown upside is a little bit better with him than with Conley. But I just think more will be funneled. Like we know that no Crowder, so that means more targets for Maurice Harris, right, in Washington. It's already the best matchup on paper that you can get going up against Tampa Bay secondary and how atrocious they've been. So if you think that Doxson, who did get targeted the last couple of weeks by Alex Smith, and that he's going to be able to move the ball even with a couple injuries to their offensive line, I think it's certainly within play, don't you think?
Yes, I do. Yes. And even though the targets aren't there, essentially, I don't love the targets, but I do like them very much, and I'm thinking that he has a chance, whether or not it's 2 or 3 targets, he is going to be targeted in the end zone. I mean, Maurice Harris, I understand when you see a guy getting double-digit targets, I understand that that's like a free, and I don't want to say a free lunch for you, but that right there, especially against Tampa Bay, is intriguing, but at the same time, he is going to be seeing a lot of top coverage as well. They haven't been able to stop anybody, but there's got to be another option they can go to. They can't really rely, the Redskins, on their run game. So I feel like they have to hit Doxson, especially when they're in that red zone.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating matchup in the sense of what Washington does, because theoretically, they should be in a monster spot. You should be able to trust Alex Smith even in cash games, except I can't because of the injuries, and I can't be. But I'm saying the matchup would indicate that he should be able to have a monster game. We've talked about this on the show before, that the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this year is Pat Mahomes. The number 2 quarterback in fantasy this year is anybody that has faced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. So, in theory, based on that logic, Alex Smith should 100% be in play, but he's not going to be highly owned, only because of the injuries, because Paul Richardson's not out, because he's missing 2/5 of his offensive line. At this point, you got to feel like Maurice Harris is a nice flyer pick and a good maybe lock play if you're playing on the salary sites. So I think because of that, Doxson is probably in play. We got some questions, Fence. They already coming in. Again, we are only on Periscope for now. We put the link over in on Facebook Live. So for those of you guys that are joining us there, go ahead and hop on Periscope. Join us over there. Having a little bit of troubles getting on both Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. But we'll post the show in full to Facebook and to YouTube once we're done. I see questions from Jay Toplicar, from Seth Atkins, our guy. But let's start with our buddy Petey Dubs, who is always good enough to hop on the show each and every week. It's PPR season-long question. Does he go with Maurice Harris, the guy that we just talked about, or Doug Baldwin today? So Baldwin is really interesting because I think about this Rams game as a potential to be one of the higher scoring games of the day. I kind of like their defense to take the ball away a couple times from Russell Wilson. I just don't see the Rams blowing anybody out with how inconsistent they've been on defense over the last few weeks. And Russell Wilson's been incredibly efficient as a passer over the last several weeks as well. The question is whether Baldwin's going to be the guy, because right now David Moore is getting a bunch of touchdowns. Tyler Lockett's been a red zone monster this year, and we're still trying to figure out what their running back situation is going to be. Chris Carson currently questionable for that game. That's going to screw a lot of fantasy owners over, knowing that Mike Davis could be in line for a massive game, just nobody knows what to do with him right now.
Right, and with Doug Baldwin, I mean, you're expecting more targets to go to him, and you could definitely throw on the Rams. That's no secret. They're giving up a ton of points, especially over the last 4 or 5 weeks, so you should be able to go with Baldwin, no problem. The problem is, though, that I have is the targets have been just so in favor of Maurice Harris that I feel like you almost have to be safe on this one and go Harris.
Harris is probably... Yeah, I think that's the way you have to go. It's the safer play. Now, Baldwin could go off. Baldwin could get 10, 11 targets if they really wanted to, if they're going to be passing. But the reality of what Seattle is doing is they're using their running game almost as much as anybody in the league. They trust Chris Carson to get those heavy yards. They're using Mike Davis both in the running game and the passing game. And I just don't know at this point if you feel comfortable enough with Baldwin to take away known targets from Harris. Like, that's what he's going to get today. I think he was targeted 11 times last week, caught 10 passes for 124 yards. And, you know that Alex Smith is looking in his direction, and they trust him against a terrible defense. So I think Maurice Harris has to be the way to go.
I agree with you.
Let's go to @J Toplicar. I think I'm pronouncing that right. We talked about Leonard Fournette. He wants to know whether you start Leonard Fournette or Adrian Peterson today. Adrian Peterson going up against a bad Tampa Bay defense as well.
Wow, I'm still going to go with Leonard Fournette here. Again, if you have Leonard Fournette, you are going to play Leonard Fournette. No limitations. Full workload. You can't rely on that Jaguars passing game. It's not the same as with other teams. You can't rely on them. They've been wildly inconsistent, and you've been waiting for this moment. You don't want to miss out on Leonard Fournette potentially having a big day. I get that the matchup is good, but what about the last matchup for Peterson? That was supposed to be amazing. He was supposed to be the best running back, and what happened? Didn't work out too well.
I think in this situation, you still have to go Fournette. It's not like it's a PPR standard difference. They're both kind of very similar in that sense, because you know that Fournette is still probably... Here's the other thing, though. Like, I know you drafted him early. Let's say Peterson's in line for Who do we think is going to have more carries at the end of the day, Fournette or Adrian Peterson? Because that's what I think a lot of this comes down to.
I think it's very close. I think Peterson probably edges him out. One, but I'm talking about 1 or 2 carries.
But so you think Fournette does more with less carries in this situation?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
so
against Indianapolis.
You seem to be thinking the other way, and I totally understand that.
No, I just hate playing Adrian Peterson because I've been talking myself into not playing him all season just because I thought after week 2 he was going to be washed, and I was totally wrong here. So I guess in that sense, yeah, I think go Fournette here. But I'm going to kick myself on this one all day for that. So, Jay Toppelgar, I appreciate the question, but this one's killing me.
He had a good matchup last week, Ben. Didn't do much with it. You've been waiting this long for Fournette. It's one thing if it was a guy who was drafted around Adrian Peterson who's been doing amazing every week. That's a different story. But because it's Adrian Peterson and it's Leonard Fournette and it's so close, I'm going to have to go with Fournette if he's doesn't have any limitations.
All right, so your question coming in from Annie Sri 23. We'll get to you in just a second, but let's go to our buddy Seth. He's got a couple. Half-point PPR league. He needs 1 running back and 1 flex Seth, I love you, buddy, but you got to give us like either or here. You can't give us
who
like
is it? I want to guess. Oh, it's 8 guys.
It's like 7 guys. So Tevin Coleman, Mark Ingram, Duke Johnson, Alshon Jeffrey, Martez Valdez-Scantling. So let's start there. A running back and a flex. So the running back options here are between 3 guys. Tevin Coleman, Mark Ingram, Duke Johnson, half-point PPR. If it were full-point PPR, Fensty, I think I'd almost feel pretty good about Duke Johnson, considering what he was able to do last week, considering that Freddie Kitchens is using both of his running backs in their most effective form for Cleveland. It's helping out Baker Mayfield. You saw Cleveland show signs of offense against Kansas City last week. But I still think in this matchup, going to Cleveland, I think you can take advantage of Tevin Coleman here, and he's probably the guy that I like the most.
Yes, I do. I mean, I think Mark Ingram will be utilized a bit more this week, but still, I like Tevin Coleman that much better.
Okay, and so then between the flex, if Coleman's already in, do we go Mark Ingram, Duke Johnson, Alshon Jeffrey, Martez Valdez-Scantling? Scantling's a sneaky good play for me today, and I know that maybe the reception and the target upside isn't there compared to that of Jeffrey, compared to Duke Johnson. I think we can rule out Mark Ingram here, right?
I actually was going to keep him in.
So that would be your flex here. You go with the 2 running backs and Coleman and Ingram. I don't like that his snaps keep going down. I don't like the fact that Kamara continues to, I mean, I like it as a Kamara owner, but I don't like it for Mark Ingram. I just don't know how many red zone, like goal line chances that they're going to just give to Ingram anymore when Kamara's been taking advantage of all of them.
Well, what about something like garbage time? Like, do you think that there's a chance that the Saints could be up by 3 scores the entire game, especially from the get-go because of how bad the Bengals defense is? I sure do.
I've been hearing that a lot, and we were doing the weekly Friday breakdown with Derek Brown, downtown Derek Brown from the Quan Edge and Fantasy Football 24/7. Good dude, by the way. Great voice in the industry.
Can he shoot threes?
I hope he can.
You better with that nickname.
Well, I was asking him on the show. I said, with a name like that, you got to go with downtown Derek Brown. He said he has like this great like Texas accent. He goes, well, I can't do his accent. But he said I had that nickname when I was a pitcher, but it wasn't a good thing. It was because I was getting taken deep.
Oh, that's not good.
No.
That's not good.
But he was talking about how he loves this game for New Orleans, and he thinks the Bengals can get blown out and Kamara's in play, and that everybody that's on Tyler Boyd shouldn't be just because he's going to get more attention to in the slot. And it was a really intriguing take. I don't trust Ingram, and I feel like if you're looking for a little bit more upside, it's either going to come from Duke in a matchup that I really like for him against Atlanta, or from Martez Valdez-Scantling in a good matchup for Green Bay against Miami.
Understood. I just think that the Bengals defense is pretty much non-existent, and Breeze is going to crush them early and then just run it to run out the clock.
Do you have any concern? Do you have any concern about Breeze and Michael Thomas and their stats on the road versus at home?
No, not in this matchup.
Okay. All right, so Seth, he's going to go with Ingram. I'm going to roll the dice on Valdez-Scantling, but Ingram probably the safer play. And then he also has a standard question, too. And again, we see more questions coming in. Let's see from who we got. Oh, Jeremy is in the house. Sizzle is here today. Annie's 323. That'll be next.
That's my boy.
Potentially. Oh yeah, that's your guy.
Ani's 3.
Ani's 3. All right, we'll get to him next. Standard flex between Sony Michel if he plays, Duke Johnson, Ito Smith, or roll the dice with Mike Davis. He says he also has Tevin Coleman as well. If there's a way, and again, you have to monitor this. If there's a way that you have room in your flex to be a little flexible here, I think if Mike Davis plays, he's the best out of all these guys.
Agreed with you.
Even as a good PPR type back, just because of Seattle's usage in the running game with a lot of these guys, he would be my favorite above everybody.
Don't get fooled by the Rams' record. You can very easily score on this team, whether it's on the ground or in the air. So don't get fooled by how good they've been. Their offense has been great, but you can definitely score on their defense.
Well, the other thing, too, about the Rams is that teams have to throw against them.
Right.
You know? And also the interesting stat that I heard about Jared Goff is that, I'm trying to remember the exact stat, but basically if teams score 20 points or more against the Rams, Jared Goff is averaging about 367 yards a game with 3.5 touchdowns. Like, and nobody's talking about Jared Goff this week after an unbelievable week last week. Like, all the conversations about Aaron Rodgers, about Pat Mahomes, Ryan Fitzpatrick and cash. And I'm thinking to myself, man, Jared Goff is sitting in a really pretty spot against Seattle. I think people are scared off by him because historically in his career, he's like 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions against the Seahawks. But I don't think that's going to change.
They're not the same team.
It's not the same team at all.
They're not the Legion of Boom anymore. That's long and gone. They're essentially not. They're not starting from scratch. But you could see that they're taking the mountain down a little bit so that they can start to rebuild.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. So if we're choosing between somebody, do you keep Tevin Coleman in that spot in standard, or are you going with Davis or Duke or Ito or Sony Michel?
At this time, I can't go with Davis until I know what the deal is with Carson. So because of that, I'm going to have to keep with if Tevin's in the mix. Again, we've seen the volume of touches, and even in standard leagues, I like Tevin.
Okay, I think Tevin, based on the matchup here and based on the volume, is probably the way to go. So appreciate it, Seth. Thanks for sending those in. Do me a favor, dude. Cut them down a little bit. Give us like an either or. All right, Annie Siri 23, your pal Elijah McGuire, streaming option today against the Bills. What do you think?
Man, so I don't mind it. I think he's going to easily, the snaps favor him against Crowell. I just have this weird feeling. It's like sometimes you just have a feeling about things. McCown's going to be throwing a lot today. I'm thinking, though, when they're inside that 5-yard line, it's going to be like 1st and goal from the 3, and then Isaiah Crowell is going to get you that touchdown that you've been waiting for when you're starting him in your flex, and he's going to be on your bench. So I think that Elijah McGuire's intriguing in that he'll get more snaps than Crowell. He'll probably get more touches than Crowell. But for some reason, because it's a very Jets thing to do, they're going to go with Crowell if they're in that position. I'm a little bit worried.
How many touchdowns do you anticipate being scored in this game? The over-under is at like 36.
Man, it's in this game, I'm expecting, and the Jets defense has not been that great, but the Jets offense as well has not been that great. But that's with Darnold. Now with McCown, I actually think the offense is going to be running a little bit better despite Robbie Anderson still being hurt. So the over-under, I'm probably still taking the under, but I think it'll be closer than people think.
Which defense do you prefer in this game, the Jets or the Bills?
I'm going to go with because I've seen what McCown can do, I'm actually going to go with the Jets defense. I think both are in decent spots. You could look at it from the other way with McCown, lack of reps lately. He might have to shake the rust off a bit, and that can result in a fumble. That can result in an interception. So think of it like that. The higher ceiling is the Bills, but I think the safer option is the Jets.
I'm with you 100%. And McCown for a while was actually a very viable fantasy quarterback.
He was last year, and I lost 2 quarterbacks to injury. And this just shows why you don't give up in fantasy football and why you can stream quarterbacks. And I picked up McCown, and I rode him until he got hurt.
Yeah.
And I believe it was a broken hand, and I rode him for about 5 weeks.
It was a broken collarbone, and he came back to play.
Right. And
Tough dude.
And then he was out for the season. Then he got hurt again and was out for the season. And the guy was very productive. He got me my 15 points per week in a PPR for quarterback, and I'm fine with that when I'm streaming. So we've seen him be able to throw, and that's why I don't think the Jets' run game is going to be as proactive. I'm not saying, and people have been asking me at Fantasy Sports on Twitter, are they going to go off? And no, and I talked about it a little bit yesterday in the show, and people, I think, misunderstood when I said that I'm thinking Crowell's going to get you a cheap touchdown. Doesn't mean I'm saying they're going off.
Right.
But still, I'm thinking that this is the week where 1st and goal in the 3, they're going to give it to Crowell, run it up the gut, and then he's going to score it. If you don't, if you start him, great, but a lot of people won't be starting him. It'll be like, great, there it is.
Right. All right. So we're saying no to McGuire in this situation.
It's not. It depends who else is out there, but still, if you want to go and thinking with the thought process that he'll get more snaps, I certainly do think he's going to get more snaps and touches than Crowell.
I just rather play him, like you said, in a situation where the Jets are likely are going to be trailing, and they're the Jets, so they're going to be trailing in plenty of games this year.
This could be a 9-6 game.
Mm-hmm.
You know. That's if there's no exact game script here for this. Both these teams have had their struggles on both sides of the ball.
There is a part of me though that wants Josh McCown to just break the slate. Like somebody rosters him and like the on fantasy sports markets, it's part of their perfect lineup. They win $100,000 and that would be awesome. From Sizzle on Periscope and on Twitter, it's a PPR toss-up, half-point PPR toss-up today. This one's really tough, Fensty, and I'm really curious to hear your perspective on this because I really like both these guys today. David Njoku or Jack Doyle half-point PPR tight end toss-up?
Well, is Njoku going to play? Because I am actually looking at some injury news right now. He is expected to play.
He is expected to play, yes.
Okay, so he's expected to play. So is he 100%? Unsure. But you know what? With him expected to play, I mean, how do you handle, right? Because I'm probably going with David Njoku since he is in.
Yeah.
But how do you handle, because those tight ends for Indy will get targeted here. It's so hard to decide. Ebron still scares me.
Yes, because he's not going to. He's so touchdown dependent when Jack Doyle's in the game, right? So
right.
when Doyle plays, Ebron's still going to get targets, but he's mostly going to be the red zone target. I think Njoku is getting 20% of the targets from Baker Mayfield, and he's a red zone target, and Atlanta funnels their offense to the middle of the field. So I think Jarvis Landry is an awesome play today. I really like Chubb and Johnson today. I think Cleveland's going to beat Atlanta, by the way. Like that's sort of like my upset special of the day. I think Cleveland can win. Just because I think they're more balanced on offense now, and just Atlanta, even with Grady Jarrett back, I don't necessarily believe that they're going to be able to slow down Cleveland. And I think Matt Ryan is always in line for one of those games where he has a 3-interception game and just doesn't look the same.
Don't say that.
Oh, is that your guy this week?
He's my guy everywhere.
Oh, no.
Okay. Don't say that,
all right,
Benny.
Fine. So I hope it's a shootout then, and I hope he throws 3 touchdowns, but then Cleveland still wins.
And let's not forget the fact that Atlanta is one of the worst teams against tight ends this year.
Yes, they
left a lot of points. So with that and the dual tight end situation you've got going on in Indy, we have to go Njoku.
Right. Now, the other thing, too, that we have to – I agree that Njoku is the play as long as he plays, and it sounds like he will. Yep. Doyle could maybe be considered a slightly safer play, though. Would you agree with that?
Again, with Ebron, I can't agree with that.
I'm just saying safer as far as targets and just getting yardage and plays down the field. Like, touchdown upside absolutely goes to Njoku, but like if you need like 6 or 7 points guaranteed, I think you have a better chance of getting that from Jack Doyle than you do from David Njoku.
Quick question for you: does Ryan Grant being back in the Colts, offensive scheme impact your decision at all? And do you think it takes targets away from the tight ends?
Not particularly. I'd have to look at some of the correlation plays and see where things line up. I just know that Luck targets Doyle a ton.
Right.
And
right.
The fact that T.Y. Hilton's going to be likely shadowed by Jalen Ramsey today makes me think that they're going to use the tight end position even more. I just think with how bad Atlanta is against tight ends, because Njoku's upside in the red zone, because he's getting 20% of the targets, the better play is Njoku, but I think the safer play could still be Doyle, if that makes sense.
Yes, I don't hate it. And again, if, let's say, a news item came out that says all of a sudden he's not expected to play and you have Doyle or do you go to the waiver wire, I'm starting Doyle.
Okay.
So I understand. But yes, the touchdown upside, which for tight ends that aren't the top few that you're expecting consistency from, I am hoping for that touchdown.
By the way, before we get to our buddy Jeremy's question, Jeremy, a frequent contributor to the show, and the Sock Man over in Kansas City, you guys should follow him at School of Sock. I think that's still the name of it. At Fantasy Sports Markets, by the way, for those of you guys that are unfamiliar with us, we are a non-salary-based DFS site. So if you wanted to play everybody on the Kansas City Chiefs, if you played on a salary site, you can't afford everybody. But that's not the case with us. You can play the guys that you want to play. And I'll put it up on the screen. If you use promo code NFL18, for those of you that haven't played on Fantasy Sports Markets before, and for those of you guys that maybe have but want to get back into it, when you register, go ahead and type in that promo code NFL18. That'll get you $5 on us to be able to use in any of our contests, whether it be our $10 to bomb entry or the $5 Sunday roll. There's a Beat Benny Heist contest for $1. You can use it 5 times for all I care. But get in on the action. There's a lot of potential money up for grabs this week. Perfect roster bonuses upwards of $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 in some of these tournaments. So they're especially fancy when you're not having to worry about who you can fit in from a salary cap perspective. Knowing that you can theoretically choose a perfect lineup without any constraints, man, that makes it even easier to try and make it happen. There have been perfect roster bonuses won before on FSM.
I think of it like I used to play NBA Live back in the day when I would want to keep trading and getting all the guys and make my own all-star team with the highest rating, all the guys ranked 99, and that would take me trades and trades and trades. On FSM, you don't have to do that. It takes 10 seconds.
It's right there for you. And again, like the timing part of it is great. And also because everyone's available to everybody, a lot of the time sharks will come in over on DFS sites, on DraftKings, on FanDuel. They'll have algorithm-based lineups. They'll put in 150 entries, and you can't win.
No.
Everybody's up for grabs here, and you're just trying to decide whether you want to play all the chalk or if you want to try and find a couple guys that are a little bit under the radar, find a few sleepers along the way. So if you haven't tried fantasysportsmarkets.com, here's an opportunity to try it on us with no deposit required. So make sure you guys go ahead, log into fantasysportsmarkets.com, and give it a try.
Ben, a lot of people are actually watching this right now thinking, oh my God, this is it. This is the week. If I'll lose my league. No, you don't have to worry about that. Don't be sad and don't feel the pressure that if you miss out on this week and you happen to lose and you're done in your seasonal league, so that's it. No, you're going to go to FSM and you're going to win. You're going to avenge what you lost in seasonal. That's how you win.
We're here for you for seasonal. We're here for you for daily. We're here for you wherever you need our fantasy help. This is what we love to do to try and make it happen. All right, let's go to our guy, Jeremy. This is a really interesting one because this is somebody that I was initially very high on at the beginning of this week, Fensty, and then I've started to sour on him a little bit purely based on the matchup. Is Tyler Boyd the best good chalk situation we've seen all season? So I'd be curious to get Jeremy's perspective if he's still on the call or still on the video, what he means good chalk for him or good chalk in general. I think the target share is going to be great today. I think Tyler Boyd could see upwards of 10 to 13, 14 targets. But I just think there's a lot of other negative correlation plays. Andy Dalton with A.J. Green out of the lineup, his numbers go statistically very far down. I think even though you have a really good matchup in the slot, and they're going to probably keep Boyd there 75 to 80% of the time, I just worry that at some point New Orleans is going to figure out that that's the only guy that they can probably throw to in this game. And so I'm a little bit more hesitant on Tyler Boyd than I initially thought I would be. So where do you stand on him?
I'm with you. And I'm with you for another reason or two. And a lot of people are going to be cute about it and go with John Ross. But another reason, and we saw what happened with Duke Johnson last week. Mm-hmm. Now Gio Bernard comes back in the lineup, expected to play today. What's stopping him from getting a few short passes? Remember, they have a run game. So they've got Joe Mixon, and he'll get a ton of carries today. But they're going to use Gio as a receiving threat. And with A.J. Green out, they're going to play short. And that's where Gio's going to come in, not Tyler Boyd every time, who's likely to draw double coverage the whole game.
Likely to draw double coverage, but he's still going to be in the slot. And I think Pat Williams is the corner that's going to be on him, and he's been one of the worst in the NFL. So I do think Boyd is going to get a bunch of opportunities. I just think the question is how much attention will be paid to him, and whether you think this game's good. If you think this game's going to be close, I actually don't think this benefits Tyler Boyd. I think this benefits Joe Mixon in the running game more so, because what that tells me is that Cincinnati's controlling time of possession. They're keeping New Orleans' offense off the field. If you think it's going to be a blowout, then Tyler Boyd's probably a perfectly fine play. But if it's close, I don't think that necessarily means he's getting involved.
I mean, it's almost one of those situations where it's too good to be true. I mean, we've seen it from Boyd, but there's no A.J. Green this time.
Right.
That's the situation. And now I'm a little bit worried about that. Obviously, you own them in seasonal leagues. It's a great matchup. And if you said, if you think that they're going to be playing from behind, which I do think is possible, that the Bengals are playing from behind, which is why on the other side I like Mark Ingram. You could go with a Boyd or even get another share with a Ross, or I don't want to say an Uzomah, but another guy who just has too good of a matchup to be true.
Right.
But the Gio situation scares the living daylights out of me, to be honest with you.
I think that's perfectly fair. I see more questions coming in. We see one from Not Nentat, we'll get to you in just a second. From P. DeSantis 25. Ryoji Mo 219 to the 317. Got a lot of questions coming up here on the FSM Fantasy Football Sunday live show exclusively on Periscope today. So, yeah, to answer your question, Jeremy, I think he's certainly in play. Like, I probably like him more than, like, I'm not starting him over like Michael Thomas or Julio Jones or Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams. I think Tyreek, especially with no Watkins, is lined for a good game. Mike Evans let a lot of people down last week. I think he is fully back in play, even against a tough defense in Washington, because of how often Fitz is looking his way. He still got 25% of the targets last week. He just didn't do a whole lot with them, and I expect him to bounce back.
What about Adam Humphries, speaking of the Bucs very quickly? That's someone that now has had a couple of good weeks in terms of fantasy, getting targeted a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think he sees more attention, or are you going to ride that train once again, Ben?
He's probably a low-risk, low-reward type of guy for me. Like, I think Humphries probably finishes with, like, 5-6 targets for 35 yards.
Okay, so nothing special today.
I don't think anything special today. I think if they're going to be special, it's going to have to come from the special wide receivers. You know what I mean? Like, Mike Evans is a special wide receiver. So I think if there's going to be somebody, he has to be the guy.
Right.
Let's go to at not Nentat. God, a lot of these names are just like tough to just say right off the schneid. I'm sorry. I guess that one was from an earlier question. One more from Sizzle. Do we go with Sterling Shepard or Marvin Jones in a half-point PPR? I think Marvin Jones, purely based on the fact that there's no more Golden Tate. I know that he's likely to draw Kyle Fuller from the Bears, who's been a really good corner this year. But I just think based on target volume, I think Jones is likely to be targeted more in this game. And even though Shepard's got a good matchup against the 49ers on the road, do you trust Eli at this point? I don't know if I can. Trust.
It's so hard, and I'm seeing Sterling Shepard on a lot of waivers, and I actually picked him up in leagues.
Because his schedule's really good over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Right, but when it comes to this situation, I mean, Kerryon Johnson is expected to play, but he is a little bit banged up with the ankle injury, so I'm thinking that does favor the passing game more. I've also been waiting for somebody else to just break through for the Lions, and it hasn't happened yet, and that actually makes me trust Jones more by default.
Interesting. Okay.
I thought someone was going to be a replacement. Like, for instance, in a league that we're in together, Ben, I picked up Brandon Powell because I read some reports that
it's a deep league, folks. It's a 14-team league with like 8 bench spots.
Right. There was an expectation that he's been working with Golden Tate over the summer. And then, now that Golden Tate's gone, he was essentially in the 2 reports that I read. And this is why I'm always encouraging people to read the local reports, not just the headlines.
Yeah.
But the reports said that he was going to step right in, and I haven't seen it thus far.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair.
You saw Michael Roberts have one good week, and then all of a sudden it's, okay, maybe more targets for this guy. Oh, Golden Tate gets traded. Oh, this should be a shooting. And then you're not seeing it.
Right. And a lot of people are on T.J. Jones as well, and that wasn't the reality of the situation. And they're lining Theo Riddick up in the slot as well.
Right. So with that, makes me trust Jones a little bit more. I need to wait and see regarding these Giants options. You have Odell Beckham Jr., you're always going to start him. You have Saquon Barkley, you're always going to start him. But outside of those 2 players, I can't trust anyone. Yes, I will be the one to go down with the ship if Evan Engram, for some reason, decides to play and go off. When I say play, I mean actually produce, because he is going to be out there. Right. But I will go down with that ship, and especially with Shepard too, I will go down with that ship unless desperate, because how bad Eli has been. Yeah,
Eli's been atrocious. I actually really like the matchup for the Giants, by the way, on Monday night. Everybody's going to be on the Nick Mullins train.
Right.
Like if I had to bet on a game this week, I think the Giants cover the 3 points easy on the road against San Francisco. The 49ers are not a good team. Like, they lost to Arizona the week before. And because they blew out the Raiders on a short week.
Yeah, Raiders stink. And by the way, something we haven't even talked about. And where are the questions about these Chargers options? Let's go. I mean, Phillip Rivers, it has a potential to be a top 5 quarterback. That's not a hot take.
Okay.
That's an exact.
Okay, so actually, this is a really interesting question for you. And again, I see more questions coming in. We will answer each and every one of your questions. I see you guys, so do not worry if we haven't gotten to your question yet. If you were attacking this Chargers-Raiders game, are you attacking them with Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers and Tyrell? Well, are you going with the passing game, or are you more likely to go with the running game? Because I'm more likely to go with Melvin Gordon here. I think Melvin Gordon has like Todd Gurley type upside today, because of the game script, because the Raiders aren't going to stop anybody on either the run or the pass. I still think Phillip Rivers is going to get his. Like, he's the only quarterback in fantasy this year to throw for multiple touchdowns in every game, which, by the way, you know what's crazy is Phillip Rivers is the number 13 quarterback in fantasy this year, despite throwing touchdowns in every game this year, multiple touchdowns. He's 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You know who has the same numbers? Matt Ryan. The difference is Matt Ryan is the number 2 quarterback in fantasy, and Matt Ryan is the number 13 quarterback in fantasy because Ryan has thrown more times, he has about 450 more passing yards per game, and he has some rushing ability. Phillip Rivers has run for like 10 yards all year. That's a massive difference despite having the same touchdown to interception ratio for one of the best passers in the NFL. If you have rushing upside, Fensty, man, you can be a really good quarterback. And that's what I'm going to tell everybody right now. Right now, pay attention. You guys following me? If you have room on your bench, okay, assuming Joe Flacco's hip injury is a serious injury, pick up Lamar Jackson, stash him, put him away, and hope that the Ravens make the right choice. Because if this guy starts to figure it out with a really easy schedule down the stretch, he could be averaging 30 points a game easily in your fantasy league. Lamar Jackson, pick him up today. Okay. Rushing
Love
game
that.
or passing game for the Chargers, Fensty.
Love that, but we have to. You know what? We have to prepare for the future, and that's something that's very interesting.
I believe Lamar Jackson is our future.
I love that. I will ride that train with you.
Okay. Just don't pick him up in our league because I'm going to do it first.
I will. So who am I? You asked me an interesting question here because I have an interesting answer for you. You said, am I relying on their pass game or running game? Well, what about their run game? Who's involved in the passing game? Because that's what Melvin Gordon's been. So I'm expecting Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon to be expecting. He is that stack in a lot of my lineups for daily today.
Okay, so if that's the case, if you have both Rivers and Gordon together,
right.
If you think that the Chargers are going to score a ton of points, normally the smart correlation play is to then run it back with somebody on the other side. I don't know. Is it Richard? Like who do you run it back with if you're stacking a lot of Chargers today, if anybody?
I mean, if looking at it from the Raiders' standpoint here, their receiving game has been garbage. It has. When you're seeing Brandon LaFell come through in a random game, where's Jordy Nelson been?
Why wouldn't you develop Martavis Bryant in a
It doesn't. It makes no sense. And here's why. I'm going to tell you why. This is my thought process on it because, again, I do a lot of reading of the local papers. I still don't think he knows the playbook. I think that's what it is. A big knock on him going into the season was he didn't know half the playbook. It was him and Ronald Jones that got scrutinized because they didn't know the playbooks. And what have you seen from Martavis Bryant? Every opportunity, even before Amari Cooper got traded, it's Derek Carr. Derek Carr hasn't been getting it done, and neither has these receivers. So with Martavis Bryant, I can't trust him at all. When you're looking with some of the other guys that we brought up today, if you're desperate in a huge bye week, and especially in leagues like we have where there's 3 wide receivers starting, if you're looking at Martavis Bryant versus Josh Doxson versus Adam Humphries, Martavis is the odd man out, and it's obvious.
Right.
He doesn't know the face,
a 33-year-old wide receiver. It's Gruden doing things that just like if you develop Martavis Bryant, if you got him right, he could be an elite level wide receiver too.
He was the number 2 wide receiver to Antonio Brown before Juju. He was the number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
Yes, a good movie reference, by the way. gotta watch Austin Powers again. But still, with Martavis Bryant, I can't rely on this game when it comes to the Raiders and Jared Cook. Even maybe it's Jared Cook and Jalen Richard.
They've cut his snaps, Fensty. Like they don't want to win.
Right. It's very odd. Like this is obvious tanking. This is some trust the process stuff right here.
Exactly. All right. Let's go back to your guys' lineup questions from P. DeSantis 25. He needs one for the flex and a half-point PPR. Ito Smith, Corey Davis, or Traquan Smith. So I think the safest option here, and by the way, I'm still high on Traquan Smith the rest of the season. Everybody dropped him when the Dez Bryant signing happened, and obviously he tore his Achilles, and that was a bummer because I didn't think Dez Bryant was going to be anything special coming back. I thought he'd be like a decent possession receiver, move the chains, catch a couple.
Did people forget that this guy dropped a lot of touchdown passes? I mean, I think people forgot. They'd say, ooh, the shine, that is Dez Bryant. He dropped a lot of passes last year. Why hasn't he gotten a contract? It's because he's not as good of a receiver as he was. He dropped a lot of passes. these last few years.
He was targeted.
Right.
He was targeted about like 130 times last year in all 16 games for the Cowboys and caught 52% of his passes.
Yeah, that's
how you get it done.
Yeah, no, that's not good at all. And people dropping Traquan Smith, the only logical explanation for that is the lack of targets. That's not happening anymore. That's going up.
Right. He's the bona fide number 2 wide receiver in New Orleans now.
Right.
Now, the thing is that there's a lot of mouths still to feed. You still have Kamara. You still have Michael Thomas. You still have Ben Watson. Mark Ingram's going to get carries. In this game, I would probably go Corey Davis just because I think for pure volume and total upside, I think Davis is the best player out of all these guys, and you know that Tennessee's going to have to throw against New England in order to compete. I think Traquan could absolutely break one loose against Cincinnati, but I think the safer play is Corey Davis, so I'm probably going there.
It makes me very nauseous to say this, Ben, but yes, I agree with Corey Davis. But I'm going to put a prediction right now, and I put it down on the radio at SiriusXM, and now I'm putting it down right here. That because I am all in on the Saints getting very much ahead of the Bengals today. I love this matchup for the Saints naturally. Both Traquan Smith and Ben Watson are scoring touchdowns today.
Ooh, okay. All right. See, I'm fading Breeze and Thomas today, and I got a ton of Kamara everywhere. So that's an interesting call. I look forward to you being right. Hopefully about one of the Saints.
It's not too wild of a call, Ben, right?
It's not. No, it's a perfectly reasonable call. I think that's perfectly fair. Let's go to at 219 to the 317 in a non-PPR. You have 2 LA Rams receivers to choose from between Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods against Seattle.
Man.
That's really tough because I love both of them, and I love them both either in PPR or standard. So I'm going to start with you first. Who do you like more between Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp today?
I like Cooper Kupp a little bit more. I'm going with the whole he's Jared Goff's guy, and when he's in. They're so close to me. I love them both today, but it's so close to me. Higher ceiling, though, I'm going to give to Woods. I think the safer play is Cooper Kupp, and that's who I'm going with.
Cooper Kupp is probably the safer play. If I'm looking at Robert Woods' game log as I get that loaded up here, he's been good, and yet I think people feel like disappointed in the fact that, it hasn't been like incredible.
There are three wide receivers and Todd Gurley there. What do you want from the guy?
Here's the thing about Robert Woods. In the last 5 games, 7 targets, 10 targets, 7, 7, 9, and then he has 5 catches, 7 catches. And he has 5. Okay, here's why. It's been remarkably consistent. Okay, 5 catches in his last 3 games each, all in the 70-yard range, no touchdowns. So good games, not spectacular. Kupp's gotten into the end zone. Brandon Cooks has gotten into the end zone. In fact, Cooks, I heard Evan Silva on the Quan Edge podcast this week talk about how his favorite play out of all these guys is Brandon Cooks, just because he feels like the matchup going up against Trey Flowers has gotten burned and cooked by speedy receivers all year. So if you think, top touchdown upside, it's probably Cooks. I just like the consistency that Woods gets. He's probably the safer play even over Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp is one of the safest plays that you can get. So I think he might actually have a little bit more upside. Cooper Kupp, he looked really good coming back off the injury last week. I'm more likely to go with him than I am with Woods.
Yep, same here. Although, again, it's a good situation to be in because both of them are going to be productive in this matchup.
Absolutely. From Colton R9 on Periscope, odd man out, non-PPR. Do I take out Amari Cooper? Oh my God! All right, Colton, we're going to make this very easy for you. Odd man out, non-PPR. Amari Cooper, Tyler Boyd, Josh Gordon, Golden Tate. You're taking out Amari Cooper, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
That might be
as much as I'm a little
question.
I'm a little bit shaky on tape, but the reports did come out that for those that are worried about him just exclusively lining up in the slot, that reports are out that they're going to try him in different spots today. And trust me, with Alshon Jeffrey going to still be that number 1 when it comes to defensive pressure for the receivers, I'm thinking that Golden Tate is still going to produce and get you about 10 to 12 points today in a half-point PPR.
Yeah, and Dallas, especially with no Sean Lee in the middle of the field, doesn't scare me. I think the matchup actually presents pretty well for Golden Tate. So Amari Cooper, and again, Philadelphia, you can pass on them, but Cooper, to me, based on all the wide receivers here, you have Tyler Boyd, who's going to get targeted a ton, Golden Tate, who's going to be a force in the middle of the field. I want to talk to you about Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon has an opportunity to go up against former Patriots corner Malcolm Butler. Have you seen what's been happening to Malcolm Butler lately?
You know what? I'm going to tell you something, and Jeff Mans brought this up to me, and him and I went back and forth on Guru Elite, fantasyguru.com. Jeff Mans said this to me, and it was very interesting because I'm thinking from both sides of it here. Revenge game narrative for both sides. The double revenge game narrative. Because on one side, you can look at it and say, do you really want to attack Malcolm Butler? He's going to want to get up for this game and prove to the Patriots. But then there's the Emperor. There's Bill Belichick. And he is going to be, and a guy who's been criticized, and Jeff said this to me, criticized regarding benching Butler for the Super Bowl game. And say you can't win without him and this and that. You don't think, and I'm fully in with what Jeff said, you don't think that Belichick knows this, has this circle, and is going to want to exploit the living daylights out of Malcolm Butler. I love that, and I love Josh Gordon. He'll be in most of my daily lineups today.
I think I have Josh Gordon exposure in about 80% of my lineups today. And it was something that we teased at the beginning of the show, that there is a Patriots player that we're not sure if we can trust. That's Rob Gronkowski. Again, if he's going to be playing or not, I don't think he will be. So again, that opens up more targets for Josh Gordon as well. Edelman, of course, in the middle of the field is always in play. But if you've been watching Malcolm Butler this year, he is biting on double moves every time. Like what you saw with Michael Thomas just completely burning Marcus Peters last week and just cooking him to a crisp. Like that's what's happening to Malcolm Butler each and every week. And I don't want to say that I was wrong about Josh Gordon because I think he's had a couple good weeks and that's been about it. He's been pretty inconsistent this year, and that's kind of what I thought he would be. But you're starting to see him get comfortable in the Patriot system. You're starting to see Tom Brady trust him. They're taking shots with him in the middle of the field. And this just feels like such an ideal matchup where that type of speed, that type of athleticism, Malcolm Butler's not a particularly athletic guy. You can take advantage of that matchup almost as well as anybody. And I feel like Josh Gordon in this spot, in this situation, could probably catch 2 touchdowns today against Malcolm Butler.
And I feel like the salaried sites gave you a little bit of a gift, Ben, because I'm looking at the pricing for Josh Gordon on DraftKings here. You know, he had week 8, he had 4 receptions, 6 targets at $7,200. So that was $7,200. Week 9, he was $6,000, and he had 10 targets, and he had 5 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. His salary this week, still $6,000. Why hasn't it gone up? That's a gift for you right there on salaried sites.
I would take it a step further. I think he should be considered as a potential flex play on fantasy sports markets this week.
I love that.
You know, in the Beat Benny Heist contest, I'm probably a little bit running back heavy right now. But I think I might throw Josh Gordon in there. Like after Julio, because I think Julio is still the top wide receiver on the slate this week, just because he's Julio. And you know that the target volume is always going to be there for him. You know, maybe Devontae Adams after that. I'm not saying there's other safer plays, but I think Josh Gordon could break a slate today. I legitimately and genuinely believe that. So I might end up having him in FSM.
Belichick holds grudges. He's not letting it go. He wants to show the world why this guy wasn't needed.
For sure. Let me give you a wide receiver toss-up today between... We were talking about the Rams receivers. Do you like Jarvis Landry more than any of the Rams receivers today, going up against Atlanta at home in Cleveland?
I do not.
Okay, because I really like Landry today, but I don't know if I like him more than the Rams guys. I'm
trying to think maybe Robert Woods, but I'm still not that confident.
Okay.
And again, in that situation, and there are targets to go around, I get that, and I get that with the running game, Chubb. Expect him to get his own set of the offensive plays. But still, Duke Johnson scares me. We were talking about Tyler Boyd a little bit and how Gio scares me a little bit. Especially they're going to want to do something different because they're expecting them to go to Boyd a lot the same. So they're going to want to expect something a little different. With Landry, it's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that makes me a little bit worried, Ben.
That's perfectly fair. All right, we got about, 6 more minutes to go here on the live show. So if anybody has any... Whoops, I just totally knocked my mic stand off. Got very animated. All right, maybe the levels aren't necessarily as good anymore, but that's okay.
Where are the Chargers questions? Let's go.
All right, you want to talk Chargers today?
Let's talk Chargers.
Okay.
We should talk. I mean, why not? Why not? They have an amazing matchup. We have not gotten one Chargers question.
I just think people know to play them.
What about it. Okay. Mike Williams versus Tyrell. Who are you going with?
I would probably go Tyrell Williams.
Okay, so with that, I'm thinking that in terms of a safe play, that's Tyrell. But the big higher ceiling, the big play guy, Mike Williams, I think has a chance to score more.
That's interesting because they're both high risk, high reward guys.
Yes.
Tyrell's been the guy that's caught 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, all on the deep route. I'm surprised to hear you say that.
I like Tyrell a little bit better than Mike Williams, but I'm thinking that this is, yes, I'm thinking that Mike is going to be productive in this game. I'm thinking they're both going to be productive in this game.
All right. Let's get into one other game, but we haven't. You know what I want to talk to you about? Here's another game that we haven't gotten any questions about is Arizona and Kansas City. This game is actually really intriguing to me, Fence, because I talked to Jeremy Sickle, who weighed in on the show earlier today, and I said I think Arizona is going to put up some points on Kansas City. I really do. The Chiefs' defense isn't impressive. I know they've been a little bit better for the last 2-3 weeks, but Arizona's coming off a bye. They have David Johnson starting to be used in the way that we thought he would be used all season. Ricky Seals-Jones played the most snaps out of all of his times since, I think, week 1 and week 2. I think he's a sneaky candidate this week. And Larry Fitzgerald's coming off an awesome game and against a defense that you can exploit in the middle of the field. And Christian Kirk is a good play, too. There are good plays on Arizona despite being 16.5-point road underdogs today. So I'm wondering who you're going to be attacking from this game, whether it be anybody on Arizona as well as which guys you like on Kansas City.
Oh, I am a Fitz guy today. And we've seen that production go up. And I was going to ask you, because you seem to really like a guy like, let's say, Valdez-Scantling. Mm-hmm. Are you more in on Fitz or Marquez Valdez-Scantling?
Fitz is a little bit safer.
Okay.
Just because you know that the target volume is going to be there. I think Valdez-Scantling has the opportunity to have a bigger game. He's a higher upside, higher risk type guy for me. But
what about Maurice Harris? Same thing?
Same thing. He's sort of in that I think on the salary sites he's a little bit cheaper.
Right.
Harris is maybe like $3,900 over on one of the sites. So I'll have exposure to all of them, but I prefer Valdez-Scantling today.
Okay.
But my favorite out of all, I think David Johnson is in line for a monster game today. I love what he's able to do. I love the fact that he's going to tout the rock 20 plus times. He's going to get opportunities, especially in a passing game where they're going to be down by a bunch. Like Arizona could score like 21, 28 points, and it might. Well, they probably won't score 28 points, but like it could end up being like a 35 to 24 type game. Like I think they cover just because they're going to have to throw a ton, and Kansas City is prepared to stop those guys.
A little bit of a cheaper option in DFS, Christian Kirk, 4,900. I'm seeing on DraftKings over here, getting targeted 7-6-7 the last 3 weeks. I mean, is that someone that you're going to want a share of if you want to go in on this Cardinals offense?
I think the two guys that I probably want the most this week are David Johnson. If I'm looking at it from a salary side perspective, I might play David Johnson in an FSM lineup too. But the problem is that there's just so many good running backs. Like you can't sit Gurley, even though he's going to be 90 to 100%. And then it's okay. Do I go with Kareem Hunt? Do I go with Alvin Kamara? Do I go with Joe Mixon? But maybe you throw in a lineup with David Johnson just in case he breaks the slate because he can against Kansas City. He's perfectly capable of being able to do so.
Right.
I probably prefer David Johnson and Ricky Seals-Jones as a flyer tight end, more so than Kirk, more so than who's the other guy? Than Fitz.
Okay. Fitz isn't that much more expensive on salaried sites than Kirk, but definitely one of those two I'm going to have a share in, Ben. You've done a great job in convincing all of us that, we often forget about the Cardinals offense, but they're slowly starting to get their stuff together, and that's been very helpful, and that's where we could take advantage with cheap prices on salaried sites.
Right. It's a combination of Kansas City likely scoring at will and them having to play this style of football. Like
Ben, you have a play, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before we end here, you have a play in Kansas City that you find intriguing. I think we have to tell everybody what this possible diamond in the rough could be.
Yeah, I think there's going to be very little ownership on somebody like Chris Conley today. I saw that Vegas hadn't adjusted its over-under on him. It's 2 receptions, and there's no Sammy Watkins in the lineup today. And Mahomes, he'll spread it around. Kelsey is obviously going to be involved, and Tyree could have a monster game. But I expect Chris Conley to get maybe between 4 and 6 targets today is a nice little dart throw if you're looking for somebody or just sort of an emergency pickup. I think he's firmly in play. He's a guy that Mahomes clearly trusts. But the problem is that you have Watkins on the field, and it just takes away from his target volume.
Right.
But who would be your guy? Do you expect Kansas City to be more run-heavy today with Kareem Hunt in a dream matchup, or do you think Mahomes is going to sling it around once again? It would be, I believe, 9 consecutive games of 300-plus yards for Mahomes today.
I mean, a little bit of both. I mean, I think that he's even going to hit Kareem Hunt, maybe even a little bit help in the passing game. A short throw, a short pitch to Kareem Hunt there could result in a lot of yardage for him. A lot more after what I've seen this season from Kareem Hunt, and maybe it's just because the Chiefs' offense is just that much better and they have more weapons, and Patrick Mahomes is a solid QB.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more trustworthy of Hunt now than I was at the beginning of the season.
All right, I'm going to put the promo code back up on the screen again for those of you guys that are coming into this podcast. Over at fantasysportsmarkets.com, we are a non-salary cap DFS site, which means you can choose whatever guys you want to put in your lineup, especially for today in the NFL where there's a lot of really intriguing matchups. You don't have to worry about how much a guy costs. You just choose the players that you want. You lock them into your lineup. You get the tiebreaker score. That's what you believe your projected point total is going to be, and you lock it in. You have a chance to win up to $50,000 in roster bonuses for our $10 contest, $25 for our $5, and so on and so forth. So, Fancy, let's do a little bit of rapid fire. Some of our favorite guys at the position, guys that you would consider without worrying about the salary over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Give me a couple quarterbacks that you're really intrigued by today.
We talked about Mahomes, so no more to say there. He's a great matchup for him, and I think he's going to throw a ton, Ben, even when I do think Kareem Hunt will be very active as well. Patrick Mahomes and also Aaron Rodgers in there for me as well. I really like this matchup versus Miami.
I like Rodgers as well. I think it's a great spot for Green Bay coming back at home against 2 really tough teams. I do worry that it could be end up being an Aaron Jones game if they get ahead early, but I do like Rodgers in this game. I also really like Jared Goff at home against Seattle because I think Seattle's going to score some points, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is also an intriguing play for Tampa going up against Washington. What about at the running back spot? Give me a couple guys that you like today.
We'll add Drew Brees onto that quarterback as well, Ben. Okay. Obviously, we've been talking about it the entire time. I mean, you've got Gurley for the Sunday games because taking Barkley out of it for a second, you do have Gurley that's obviously in play, but I love Melvin Gordon. I've been saying that. Possibly could be the number 1 running back in this slate out of anyone today. I'm expecting that. And with Melvin Gordon, he will be in a lot of my lineups.
I love Gurley, I love Gordon, I love Kareem Hunt, and Alvin Kamara. I think some sort of combination of those 4 guys, you have to have exposure to at least 3 of them on your fantasysportsmarkets.com lineup. And then David Johnson should absolutely be included in the mix as well. If you're looking for a really good salary cap lineup, make sure Deion Lewis is in there because I think his value is exceptional today. Wide receiver, Michael Thomas. Always in play. Although I prefer Julio today, I love Devontae Adams. I think Keenan Allen, if you're going to believe in Phillip Rivers today, is in play along with Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans. Maybe Tyler Boyd is in that mix as well. Am I missing anybody there?
No, just one of those Rams receivers you may want to get as well, but it's really you hit on everyone. I mean, Michael Thomas, really the only other guy that I could think about, Ben.
Yeah, and again, you want to make sure that you have one of those Rams receivers if you're starting Jared Goff. But then again, man, you can pair him up with Todd Gurley and still feel really good about it too.
Right.
Tight end, it's kind of Kelsey, Ertz, or bust, right?
Right, exactly. No, it is. You look at, if there's someone else that I could think about that might be in a good spot, David Njoku. Mm-hmm. Regarding everything stays the same and plays and looks like he does. Outside of that, that's about it. You could think of it from this as well. It's non-salaried, so I feel like you have to go with Kelsey or Ertz here. But if it's salaried here, you may want to give the Tampa Bay tight end with O.J. Howard. Not Brate, forget Brate, but O.J. Howard also in the play as well.
O.J. Howard, yards after catch this year has just been stupid good. He's been a lot of fun. Fancy, where can the people find you each and every week?
At Fensty Sports on Twitter and also on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio every single Saturday. It's Wake Up Fantasy Sports, 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern or on demand. And also for your fantasy basketball needs, season long and DFS, reporting on the breaking news of the Jimmy Butler trade yesterday. FantasyAlarm.com. I've got you covered.
He's the best in the business. He's with us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. East Coast time, 9 a.m. Central. We are here for you. We'll continue to be on Twitter monitoring some of the emergency starts, last-minute injury news, at Benny Heiss, at Fensty Sports, also at FSM Contest. Make sure you guys get your lineups in. A lot of them have sold out, especially on the NFL side. So get your lineups in over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Don't forget about that promo code. I'll put it on the screen one more time. NFL 18 for $5 on us. Get those lineups in before they sell out. For Fensty, I'm Ben. Thank you guys for watching and being a part of the show today. We will talk to you next week on FSM Football Sunday. Until then, be good.